All right, we are looking at page 206 in your packet that I made for you, the 6-1 Exploring Integers. So follow along with me. What you're going to learn to use integers, opposites, and absolute values to represent real world situations. In your new vocabulary words that you're going to have their definitions to are opposites, integers, and again, absolute value. So why do you need to learn this? Well, you can use integers to represent real-world situations. For example, in the tug of war below, the team on the right has gained 2 feet. And then if you look, the position of the flag is at a +2 or +2. You can write it either way. You can write this as +2 with the plus sign, or just 2 we know is positive because it doesn't have that negative sign. So when they started this tug of war, the flag would have been here at 0, but the team on the right pulled harder and it moved to the right 2 places. So they gained 2 feet, and so it would be shown as +2. So suppose the team on the right had lost 2 feet instead, then here would be the position of the flag at 0 to begin, and the flag would have moved to the left, and they would have lost 2 feet, so they would have had a -2, or you would write this with the negative sign in front of the 2. Alright, so pause me here because we have a couple of vocab words for you, and then push play when you're ready. So opposites are 2 numbers that are the same distance from 0 on a number line, but in opposite directions. So here, we're up above where there's a dot on the -2. So it's 2 spots or places from 0. So the opposite is going to be that +2 over here. These would be considered opposites. So obviously they're going to be the same number. One's just going to be positive and one is going to be negative. And then integers are a set of positive whole numbers, their opposites, which would be the negative whole numbers, and 0. The opposite of 0 is just going to be 0. So representing situations with integers, let's look at the example below. Alright, so multiple choice here. Dry ice is solid carbon dioxide, which freezes at about 109 degrees below 0 on the Fahrenheit scale. Which integer represents the freezing point of dry ice? So temperature is also that number line, but it's the vertical number line, and we have, your 0 here, and everything below is they're going to be negative numbers, and everything above is going to be positive. So if carbon dioxide, the solid carbon dioxide, freezes at 109 degrees below Fahrenheit, then it's going to be down here in the negative. So if we look at our choices here, we have -109, -119. It's not even the right number. +119, that's not the right number. +109. So you should be able to figure out that because it's below 0, we're in the negative, and it would have to be that -109 degrees below 0, which would be the -109. Okay, take a minute to pause me and read that quick check and then hit play and see if you have the correct answer. So the quick check says the lowest elevation in New Orleans, Louisiana is 8 feet below sea level. Use an integer to represent this elevation, and what does 0 represent? Alright, so what integer or what number would you write as the lowest elevation in New Orleans, Louisiana? So this again, you would want to have your vertical number line with 0, and then we have this lowest elevation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 feet below, this -8 here. So you would write -8 to represent that elevation. And then what does 0 represent? Well, this 0 must be sea level. And this lowest elevation is 8 degrees below that. Alright, let's look at the next page. Okay, the top of page 207 here says the opposite of a positive number is negative, and the opposite of a negative number, hold on just a second, is positive. Okay, here you go. So this should make sense. So they give you this example down here at number 2. Write the opposite of 3. Well, this is a positive 3. So it would be right here. The opposite would be the same distance from 0, but in the opposite direction, which would give you that negative 3. So 3 is the opposite of negative 3. So if you were to write the opposite of negative 5, which would be over here, then you would find that positive 5 on the opposite side. So that would be the answer. And then it talks about how the opposite of any positive or negative number is the number itself. Alright, that may look a little confusing there, but just know it's basically saying the opposite of the opposite. So you're jumping back and forth. So if I was talking about 3, the opposite would be negative 3. Of the opposite, which would be back to 3, is the number itself. Alright, we're looking at the absolute value, so go ahead and pause me and write this definition. The absolute value of a number is just its distance from 0 on the number line. So, and the symbol for the absolute value of a number is, say the number's n, you could put any number in for n, is just the number with these little bracket or lines really beside it. Opposite numbers have the same absolute value. So whether it's a positive 5 or a negative 5, if I'm looking for the absolute value of either of these, they are the same distance from 0, or their absolute value is going to be 5. So they give you an example here at number 3. A student withdraws $4 from a savings account. This can be represented by negative 4. So they took that 4 out, so minus 4. And they want you to find the absolute value of negative 4 and explain its meaning. Well, since negative 4 is 4 units from 0, the absolute value of negative 4 is just 4. And this absolute value of negative 4 represents the amount of the withdrawal. So they took out $4. Alright, pause me and do this quick check number 3 and then see if you get A and B correct. Number 3 says a bird dives down 12 feet. So we'll say the bird's flying along, and we are going to call this 0. And it dives down 12 feet, so we'll make some hash marks, but eventually we're going to get down to 12 feet. If I was going to write an integer for this situation, my integer would be this negative 12, the distance that it dove down. And if I said, well, explain the meaning of the absolute value of the integer, which means I would have to write 12 like this, I would say, well, what distance did it dive down from 0? Well, that would be the 12 feet. Alright, what I'd like you to do is, for homework, is to go ahead and do number 1. Give examples of numbers that are integers and numbers that are not integers, and then describe 2 different real-life situations that can be represented by the integer negative 9. Look back at the examples, and that should hopefully help you, and bring to class tomorrow a question if you have one. See you then.